Hey love, so I was doing a little bit of research because I wanted to figure out what would really help people now going into nursing school, and even people who are maybe going into their second year and really felt like there's a way that they can improve on being a student. So I found these 14 pieces of advice every nursing student should receive, and this is on nursetogether.com, and I definitely advise you guys going on there and reading it. And I'm going to read each of the tips, and then I'm going to give you guys a little bit of what I think should be added to it or my opinion on things. So the first one is get organized from day one. That is an absolute must. When it comes to your application and you have your transcripts and you have your recommendation letters, everything should be organized. You get one binder and you keep everything in there, and you have the folder tabs to keep everything separate. When you get accepted, then you keep all your pre-work that you get in there, as far as, you know, the checklist sheet that of everything that needs to be completed before you start. If you're transferring in credits, keep all your degree audits, just in case it ever is an issue. And trust me, you may have an issue. I think they ended up saying like 2 or 3 classes that I took they weren't going to accept, when I previously received a letter saying that they did accept it. So by keeping those things, you help to protect yourself better. Also, any receipts that you're going to use if you file your taxes, say as your books, your scrubs, any school supplies or anything like that, keep all that stuff together and keep it in one binder so you know where to go to look. So being organized from the very jump will help you in the long run. Also, once you actually start school, depending on the best way it is for you to learn, is keep all your notes in one place. For me, I started off taking notes, and then I started using white paper and making charts, and then I just pretty much streamlined everything into the computer. And that's what works for me. And it works for me for a couple of reasons. For one, I don't ever worry about losing the paper and it being misplaced, or taking out my binder, or somebody borrowing my notes and not getting it back. With the computer, I always have it. I could send it to my phone, I could send it to an email, I can always access it, I can add to things later, and it definitely helps me. So do what works for you, but you know, make sure that you have everything in an organized manner so you're not losing things. So another tip is knowing your learning style, which I went over, and I think that is definitely valuable for you to know. It will help you figure out the best way for you to study, what study techniques to use, such as like flashcards, typing up your notes, recording lectures, all that stuff. So I definitely recommend knowing your learning style. If you don't understand something, get help right away. That is an absolute must. Nursing school goes over information really quickly, and you think it's not that bad because you're like, okay, I'm learning maybe 4 chapters in today's lecture, so you think you have time to catch up, but you really don't, because by the time you get home and you make your notes and you're doing all your clinical paperwork, you need to start reading for the next class. So information is quickly being brought on, and if you don't have a good groundwork, it is going to make it so much harder for you to catch up later. So the minute you don't understand something, raise your hand. If you don't want to raise your hand, send an email, ask to talk to the teacher after school, look something up. But definitely know the information, because it will be on an exam, it will be on a test, or it will be something that you need to know for clinicals. And if you just let it go, by and you never understand the information, it could come back to haunt you. So definitely know the information. Also, I would say go over your anatomy before you start school. So as far as like, okay, knowing your bones, the type of bones, knowing cardiac, knowing how the heart works, know like the general information would be good. So another tip is to take care of yourself, and I absolutely agree with that. Nursing school can be really stressful, and you know, and sometimes it's not even just nursing school, but it can just be dealing with life in addition to going to school. That could be a lot. So you know, eating well, working out when you can, learning how to de-stress, and giving yourself some like personal time to really relax yourself, especially after an exam, is all great things you should do. If you do yoga, meditation, anything like that is great. So definitely take care of yourself. You should have at least one study partner. I definitely agree with that. In the beginning, I wasn't studying with anyone, and I mean, if you can study by yourself and you do best by studying by yourself, then by all means do it. But having someone to study with that can ask you questions, who can give you another aspect of the way that they're looking at the questions and how they're answering it, as to, I mean, like why they chose certain answers or what their rationale is definitely good, because that can help to expand your knowledge, or they can explain something to you that you may not have understood during class. So having another study partner is good. However, you make sure it is a good study partner. So you don't want to just choose your friend just because, you know, you guys are close. You want to choose someone that's actually good. Okay. So yeah, have one study partner. I think it's great to have someone else that you can bounce off your ideas to, and someone that you can trust, you know, to give you the right information. It's very important that especially before exams, you don't allow other people's thoughts of what they think they heard or what they learned or anything like that to confuse you from what you know. So have one person that you can trust, that you know, who is not going to give you the wrong information, and everyone else you kind of just keep to the wayside, because you don't want them to confuse you with something if you already know what the answer is. Practice time management. That is a must. Things easily can get away from you if you don't really pay attention to what you're doing. So for instance, when I would read, I would have class on Mondays, or is it Tuesdays? I would have class on Tuesdays. So Mondays after clinicals, I would finish my clinical paperwork, and then I would read. I would actually try to read a little bit before Monday, somewhere like around Friday, Saturday. And then I would type up my notes. But I would try to have all my notes ready by Monday night. That way Tuesday when I go into class, I'm fully ready to just take additional notes from what they're saying during lecture. So if you don't practice time management and you finish like maybe just one chapter and you needed to do 2 chapters, then you're unprepared. And you don't ever want to be unprepared, because by being unprepared, you're going to fall behind and it's harder to catch up. So you need to make sure that you really practice your time management. And if you have to, say, go to the gym, you schedule that at a certain time, you try to stick to it. If you go to bed at a certain time, I really recommend staying close to your schedule as possible, especially when it comes to sleep, because you really should get as much sleep as possible. And they say, as far as having a good sleep balance, is if you keep a schedule, especially like if you go to bed at, I don't know, say 10 o'clock at night, every night you do a certain regimen of brushing your teeth, turning off your TV, giving yourself a cool down period, and you go to sleep at 10, you wake up at 5 something or 6 or whatever time it is that you need to. But keep a schedule, and you know, always try to maintain it, and don't let too many things affect your time, because that's time you can't get back, and you don't want to miss something. Or so another thing says, learn from your mistakes, and I definitely agree with that. Learning from your mistakes is important. And you know, say if you fail an exam, it may happen. It's not a big deal, but you cannot let that happen again. So if you know what your problem is, say for instance you weren't studying as much as you're supposed to, or you didn't, you know, try a different studying technique, or you were out partying too much, or whatever the reason is that you learn from your mistakes and you rectify it. So if you know that you're not putting in the amount of time that you need to study, and then going forward, then you need to put in that time. And that is the only way you can guarantee success in nursing school, is that you have to put in that time and you have to put in the effort, and there's just no way around it. So when you know you're doing something wrong, make sure you fix it as fast as possible. Do not wait until the end of the semester when your grades are pretty much final and now you can't do anything about it. This mentions train and touch type, which means just being able to type without looking at the keyboard. I think it's good to know how to do, because if you're typing in class, it can be a little bit hard to look at the screen and try to focus on what the teacher's telling you or what they're pointing at. So if you're able to type and not have to look at the computer when you're actually typing, that could help you a lot. Another tip they say is to get some experience. That is definitely a great thing for you to do. Getting experience really helps to reinforce your learning. There have been many times that I'm at work that I've seen something that we have talked about in class, or I'm able to ask somebody in the field why are certain things the way that it is. So it's more than just having the textbook knowledge in clinicals, because in clinicals you're still learning. But if you're also in a work setting, you're able to, you know, ask questions. You may be able to see a little bit more. You're not able to participate in the capacity as a nurse or a nursing student, because that's not what your scope of practice is within a certain job. But it is definitely good to have something to reinforce your learning. Another tip they say, your pile up books. Instead of always renting your books, certain books you should just buy and keep. Fundamentals, I think you should definitely keep. Med-Surg, I agree that you should keep. Books that you may not possibly need is maybe psychology, but I have bought every single book that I've needed for class and I plan on keeping, except my psychology book. But because I am now typing up my notes, I will make sure that I type everything up so that when it comes to taking the NCLEX, I am prepared and I have all the information I need if I need to go back and ever review things. So you don't always want to rent books, because say you need it later for a test, or you want to go back and look at something, you don't have it. So if you can, get older editions if it's just too expensive to buy new ones. And you know, if you really don't have the option and renting is the only way, then I would say take as many notes as possible, or even photocopy some of the pages or something. But you just want to make sure that you have this information if you ever need it at a later time. Do assigned reading before class. That is a must. It helps you in such a big way. First of all, when you read your notes, you just have like a very basic understanding, and then when you go into class, they reinforce the learning. And then after class, when you take notes, you're now putting everything all together again. So knowing the material before you get there helps you, because if you don't read anything before class and now you're just going to class and you're being lectured, you're now learning the material for the first time. So now you still have to go back and reinforce that learning. So reading before class is an absolute must. Take time to review, always. You always want to go over the notes that you took, or the lecture that you just had, or after a study group that you've had. You always want to review that material, because you want to make sure that you understand everything that was said to you. You want to make sure if you have any questions that you're able to ask those questions as soon as possible. And it also helps to make sure that you're really ingraining the material so that it stays with you. You don't ever want to just just memorize test material for just that test. With nursing, you need to know this for the rest of your life, so this really needs to be retained information. Study in a small group. You guys know how I feel about that. Definitely study in a small group. Do as many practice questions as possible, and I definitely agree with that. The best way you're ever going to get good at taking tests is by practicing them. The best way you're going to get better at math is by practicing questions. So definitely do as many questions as possible. A few of the nurses that I've worked with, they've mentioned doing like 75 NCLEX questions a day, so that when it actually came time for her to take her NCLEX, she said it was such a breeze that she didn't even have to think about it. Now, do I do 75 questions a day? I don't. Do I wish I did? Sometimes. I would probably be okay with doing maybe 10 to 15 questions a day, and I think that would be good. I haven't started doing that, and I definitely will, because I will be taking my NCLEX next year, soon after I graduate. So it is definitely a necessity for you to practice, because you want to make sure that you are not only understanding the material, but you also get comfortable taking a test. You need to build up that endurance for taking tests. And I would say that a lot of the textbooks, especially the success books, they have a little part in the beginning of the chapter of how to take tests and test taking strategies. I think they even have a book. I definitely recommend that for any person that fails a test. Look over that material, figure out what you're doing wrong, and then, go from there. But if someone is giving you a free resource, use it. So if you have test taking tips, strategies, use it. Even if you're good at taking tests, there's always a better way of doing something. You can always expand to be a little bit better. So I would say that. So I think that's all the tips that I have so far. If I think of any more, I'll definitely add more to a video. And I am working on some math now, and I will try to post a video. Hopefully by this weekend I will post some math questions and then how I'm working out the problems. That's it. I hope you guys find this helpful. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.